Welcome back to the Hearth, everyone. Kristin Sipley, Alison Greene-Barton, and Kate White and I are going to be talking about our topic for this month, which is making friends with our adaptive strategies. And adaptive strategies are behaviors and things we learn how to do to survive our families if we did not have optimal experiences when we were little. And it can be, for me, one of my adaptive strategies is to be a good girl, to take care of other people. And in fact, my adaptive strategy became something that I do for work. I was a body worker, I was a yoga teacher, and now I do this. And it began by that adaptive strategy of taking care of other people and being nice. And then as I freed myself more from those, from my history and integrated my past, now they have brought me many gifts. So what started out as an adaptive strategy to get through my family as it was actually turned into a gift. And I had many capacities that adaptive strategy had brought me. And the reason why we talk about making friends with those parts of ourselves is in the beginning, I know for myself, there were many adaptive strategies that I judged. And I was very hard on myself for having those. And then as I began to understand them more, why I did them, and that actually those adaptive strategies were drawing on my innate gifts, then I realized that I could actually be grateful for them, that I could be friends with them, and maybe even accept and love them. So for this video and then for our conversation, we'll be just sharing our experiences with that, how we've become friends with it, and then also what's it like when we aren't friends with them, and especially in the beginning of our work. I'll let somebody else take over from here.
Go ahead, Allison.
All of our adaptive strategies are online right now.
Okay, I'll step in. So thank you, Eileen, for starting this off and giving a good explanation of adaptive strategies. I'm sitting with my adaptive strategy where I'm overactive. And I learned at a young age that to do more made me feel good. And that to do less when I was inactive, I felt miserable. And I judged the inactive place and would beat myself up for it, when honestly, I really needed the rest from being overactive. And then there was a part of me that just kept striving for the overactivity in order to keep feeling good. You know, it can have an addictive quality to it. And so I would end up in these polarities, reach to an exhausted place where I had to rest. And it felt like I had to go so far, it became an involuntary response. And then I would judge myself for not being active because the resting place felt not like resting. And it was hard to do anything from that place because there was a deep need in me to rest that I was ignoring. And I've gotten in touch with my own personal work that the overactive place was a way to deal with great loss. You know, so I found early on that by achieving a lot, doing a lot, you know, being constructive with my time rather than sitting around feeling sad or depressed was a better way to go. But it was masking a place where I didn't know without support how to feel the pain of loss. And so loss or abandonment were, I think, two constant triggers. And when I was young, I didn't know that I had a twin that died in the womb. But I think that's part of it, always trying to override this feeling of loss because it was never met. And and then other triggers of abandonment in my childhood, which would also trigger that place of early loss, the primary place. So when I've experienced losses in my life, I my way of sometimes dealing with it is to start new projects. To buy a home, I have to renovate, or to sign up more classes that I'm going to be teaching, to feel good about life. And um, one of the ways that I've been learning to work with it is to see now the positive in the activity, like I've gotten a lot done and I do feel good about it, but also the positive in the need for rest and what is true rest, and loving the part of me that might want to go on vacation and do nothing and have fun adventures rather than being so exhausted I have to recuperate. And the other part of me that can get things done without having to push or effort so much. Um, so when I take away the judgment of the two sides, because I also judge the part of me that needs to be overactive. When I take away those judgments and I'm sitting in the essence of the beauty of each side, um, it's something's been shifting inside of me where I'm really appreciating or loving myself more. Actually, I think a better word is accepting myself more. I'm growing into a loving place, but I'm accepting myself more. And that's shifting these two sides.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. Well, my adaptive strategies is a lot like yours, Allison, because we have some similar dynamics, with the twin dynamic, the twin loss. But my strategy arose from the near-death experience, and the intrauterine constraint at birth. So it was like, for me, it was like if I rested, it would impinge my cord. So resting equals stress, and movement equals life. And so even though I have natural gifts in sympathetic action, like the mobility action, doing, just like you have described, Allison, if I rested, uh, it was stressful. And so I'm still working with that in a very friendly way, from the inside out. But I was constantly doing, and it was coupled with, early family dynamics, which were really challenging. And I would just run. I was a big runner, and I would run and run and run and run and run. And so the exercise also became an adaptive strategy. And of course, exercise is supposed to be good for you, right? So, but for me, it was running and over exercising. So, really learning that, like, I would get home from work. This was when I was in my 20s, and I'd be like, oh, I'm so tired. I think I'll run 5 miles.
Mm.
That was my adaptation strategy. And uh, so I'm still, really examining like what my body does more from the inside out now, the cortisol and what it's done for my body. Like I really need now rest, and I'm really taking the time to rest and allowing myself to have those days where I don't exercise or I don't do too much. And so to me, it's more like a befriending. I am befriending this strategy and learning a yielding, like yielding without stress. And I notice when I truly rest, that sweet spot, this tremendous creativity, just it's like a fountain. Just so I'm learning how to moderate that as well. Because if I start to get really creative and just like you, Allison, I'm like, oh, classes, oh, more things to write. Oh, no, I can do that. There's this constant like interface with the world that's like, oh, this is so easy for me, so easy. And learning how to just like, okay, just soothe that part. You can do this, and then try this. And remember, when you really rest, there's something more happens. So, but I've been hard at work on this for, since I started pre and perinatal somatics. And there was a lot of ego that was attached to my adaptive strategy. Being breech baby, having near-death experience. But when I really worked on that, the attachment is not there anymore. In fact, I'm really like trying to be friendly with this adaptive strategy and to say, hey, that was then, this is now. You can truly rest. And that's where I'm at. Yeah, it's a big part of my life.
Thanks, Kate.
Mhm.
I'm loving the stories that are coming up right now. And just hearing, listening to the three of you. I'm also appreciating that little hesitation we had after you completed, Eileen, and watching the three of us, like who's going to go? So it really brings up my own adaptive strategy of hiding, of the part that doesn't want to be seen, um, from my history of, if you would, like discovery of when someone discovered I existed, the impact on the family and the reaction or response to it. So I learned really early to hide, to avoid being seen, try to make myself as small or as invisible as possible. Um, yeah, so I think someone was talking about superpowers uh, a few weeks ago or something, and I was thinking, I always wanted to be invisible. And I think that's sort of, in some ways, has been my adaptive strategy of being as invisible as possible. And the value of that, what it taught me or what it offered me was I really learned how to, or the adaptive strategy was to sit back, to observe, to wait. And I think that really served me to find when it was right for me myself to come forward, to actually watch how people interacted. It was what made me curious about what makes us tick, what supports each of us to be who we are and how we respond to things. And I would say that it has helped me become, in some ways, more observant, be more curious, not more than other people, but just for myself. And I think it also led into looking at sometimes worst case scenarios too, and trying to prevent things from happening before they happen, which has been both a challenge and a benefit. It has been a challenge because then sometimes I could go too deep into seriousness and lose some of the lightness of a situation. But at the same time, I could also see and prepare for things. And I know in classrooms, one of the biggest things people often ask me are like the numbers of the students and how do we like split up into exercises, do we have the right numbers and things that way? Because I immediately am looking at how many numbers there are. If we're going to do triads or dyads, does it split evenly, and how much support do we need? So it's really helped me in a lot of ways. One person even reflected to me at one point after the Ojai fires and what we did for the training. Someone said, "You would be a really good first responder," because I don't know, I slowed down and was like, what is needed? How do we make sure everyone's okay? Is there a place where we can reconnect? You just make sure, touch in and make sure everyone got out, that they have some support, that we have some connection. And I think that in some ways that me having the desire to be invisible at first really developed my awareness or my attention on like groups of people, and how do we support each other in that. So I have learned to appreciate and value what it has given me over time. And it has also encouraged me to slow down in terms of this work and trust my pacing and learning of it, and not come forward too soon or before I was ready.
Kristin,
Wow. Thank you, Kristin. I was just going to say thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really appreciating your adaptive strategy. And that, I don't know, I feel a lot of warmth even in the kindness with which you're holding that strategy. And that is one of the ways that we work. That is one of the ways I have worked on my own adaptive strategies, is how to be kinder. I actually heard all of you speak about that. For me, in my, I mentioned earlier one of my adaptive strategies, and another one of my adaptive strategies is to push. There's in the history, there's a collapse. It's both ancestral and in my own birth history, there's a collapse that happens right before, at that point at which I would have gone into action, into really engaging with my birth. And so in the history, there's where the anesthesia came in and I got lost. And for most of my life, I didn't know what that was. I just had a lot of judgment about procrastination and not being able to get into action. So the adaptive strategy that I came up with was a push, like this, overriding my natural rhythm, and then just looking around at people that, I admired people who got things done. And so I created this artificial push. I don't think I really thought about it. And that push really gets things done. And it also really exhausted me. I spent my adult life pushing and exhausting myself. And I've really had to rest now in the last few years to really rest up from that push. But I'm so grateful for that push, because I didn't know why I felt so stuck. And I judged myself for getting stuck. And in that time, that push helped me move forward. It helped me live my life. It helped me, uh, get done some of the things I wanted to get done. And, even coming into the pre and perinatal somatics, my push got me in here. So I really appreciate that adaptive strategy, and even the way I know how to do a lot really fast, and to take decisive action. I appreciate that. It really serves me in many ways. And but now I know how to turn it on and off, more from a place of choice rather than um, feeling like that's the only way. So appreciating that capacity, and also having the choice to go at a pace that's more my natural pace.
Mm. Well, thanks, Eileen. I learned from you that our adaptive strategies they borrow from our strengths. And I say actually, when I'm working with families, with children, that each of us has a strength. Deb Dana calls it a home away from home. Like what we talk about the autonomic nervous system and its function, and as it encounters challenges, what does it do? And so my strategy of, actually mobilization, like doing, it borrows from my natural sympathetic action that's so easy for me. Like I'm not a collapse, doesn't come into my repertoire very much. But other people, they may have great strengths in parasympathetic rest or parasympathetic, just the deep listening and a slower pace. And that's also like working with people to understand their strengths and how their adaptations grow from them. And when I talk to parents about like their children, these light bulbs go off like, oh, these are strengths. And this is just a turn on that somehow. And I often will say to people, because I work a lot with that aggressive child, and they probably have great strengths in leadership and, getting things done. And maybe they'll be a CEO one day or invent a new race car. I mean, really helping them understand that they have natural gifts in these places, and our way we've adapted into the world borrows from those strengths.
I love the fact that you use the word gifts, Kate. It
Mhm.
really reminds me of our topic from last time of really connecting to the health that's there. And I agree with you. It's just, there's a way that we learn to respond to the environment in which we grew up. And from that, it was what was available to us and the strength that we had to navigate that, that then can give us a gift of fight or mobilization or patience or action, whatever it might be. It really can support, when we become friends with it without judgment, really support us and available if we need it, and support us in other ways. So,
I'm really appreciating all these stories. It's reminding me of something Ray used to say, that if we had a very easy, loving, balanced, wonderful birth, that we might not become as easily aware of our gifts that develop out of our adaptive strategies. And I often think of these gifts as our Olympic skills, that we've been training in them since we were in the womb and we learned to survive. And how brilliant, we are to have been able to do that, to find a way through, to find a way through the birth canal, to find a way through to survive. I mean, in my case, I survived a toxic womb that my twin did not survive because of my adaptive strategies. And those carry on, that experience of in some way, we're really choosing life through these adaptive strategies. We're choosing to be here, even though eventually the adaptive strategies could wear your system down. But in seeing the gift of it and seeing that you're here because of those adaptive strategies, we can really receive them and embrace them and be grateful to them. And another thing Ray used to say is that unless we really honor them, they won't soften and let go. Like we need to be almost bow to them and say thank you for helping me get here, for helping me survive. And now I'm going to take the next step, rather than unconsciously just having you take the next step. We're going to work together. And he was really good at showing us where we had these adaptive survival strategies and to thank them. I know for myself, I was able to let go and yield a lot through that sense of gratitude.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm
that's
enjoying
beautiful.
the subject with all of us. Really interesting.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Like Ray used to say to me, "You're trying to get there before you get there," which was part of my adaptation strategy. And yeah, I feel more solid with what you say, Allison, the power of choice and relationship with our strategies.
Feels like a good place to complete.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
See
you,
you in the
everyone.
yeah.
Thank you.
Come and bring your adaptive strategies, and we'll have a conversation.